So I'm so glad that you joined me in this Bible study to study the book of Samuel. It is a completely interesting book full of great characters. In fact, when you're reading the book of Samuel, it's important to put yourself into the life of these characters. Not fully, but at any given moment in your time. So who do we have? We have Eli and his two delinquent sons. We have Samuel. We have Hannah, who goes and lays down her heart before the Lord, hoping for a child. I love these stories of these women that turn to God to help them conceive. Not because God helps them conceive, but to call to our mind the reality that God helps every person, every woman to conceive. Every child that comes into the world is a gift from God that belongs to God, that is here because of God. We have Saul. We have David, we have Bathsheba and Uriah, we have Nathan and Joab, we have Absalom and Anna and Tamara, like we have Jonathan. We have a very interesting cast of characters in these very vivid stories that are told in the book of Samuel. Now, originally the book of Samuel was books, was one book, not two, but the scroll, I guess, was way too long. So they cut it in half and rolled it into two so you could carry one scroll under each arm. The first section in Samuel is chapter 1 through 7. And in that, we get this sense, of course, of Hannah's loyalty to God and giving Samuel to the temple to be raised as a priest, but also this story of the Israelites going to invade the Philistines, and they're carrying the ark in front of them like God. They got this trophy thing, and God's with them, and who can be against them? And they're going to carry the thing, and everybody's going to run because they have the Ark of the Covenant. Turns out Philistines trounce them, take the ark, take it home, and then God does what God is going to do, and boils or whatever break out, and they take that ark back to the Israelites forthwith, because they don't want that thing hanging around. The point of these first 7 chapters is this: to be humble, to wait on God, that God has got it, that God's works will be done in the world around us. We move to the second part of 1 Samuel that talks about Saul. This is chapters 8 through 31. Now, Saul, big, good-looking dude, Benjaminite, probably like the sort of the Tom Brady with longer hair, drives 12 oxen. He is a real sort of stud, and everybody looks up to him. Oh, here's Saul. And so they make Saul king. Samuel says it's not a good idea. God says, let them do what they want to do. They're going to anyway. Another way of saying that is we do have agency, and God allows that to play out. Well, anyway, Saul starts out strong, but he sort of slips because at the end of the day, he doesn't trust God. He doesn't trust that God's got this. We see this symbolically or indicatively in that time when he sacrifices before Samuel can get there. And you're like, gosh, that's a little thin-skinned on God's part to collapse the kingdom because he does one wrong thing. Again, indicative, right? Not the thing, but an example of all things, where when Saul is pushed against the wall, he does it the way Saul would do it and not waiting for God. Saul slips into madness and starts doing some wackadoodle things. David then is found by Samuel and anointed, the youngest son of Jesse, and he comes to fame when he goes and he slingshots in the middle of the noggin Goliath, who falls to the ground, cuts off his head. So David then is embraced by Saul. He's brought into his inner circle, but Saul, in his madness and his jealousy, continues to try to kill David, and David's got to flee and come back and flee and come back, and he has this special relationship with Jonathan that helps him navigate the insanity of Saul. There's a couple of times in which he can outright kill Saul. He's that close that he can cut off the hem of his robe, but he doesn't, because Saul is God's appointed, and David is not charged to kill him. Even if he thinks God has set Saul into his hands, he does not do it. He is not charged with that task. This represents 2 very important things about David. One, that he's loyal, and second, that he is patient. There's another thing about David that we're going to see in a little bit that is admirable, is he listens to other people. He listens to their advice to him. And that's hard to do when you're king, because when you're king, first of all, most people don't tell you the truth. And secondly, when they do, you don't have to do it, because the king gets to do what the king wants, when the king wants, the way the king wants to, period. But we see, and we see David do this, right? There he is. His troops are out. He's won a lot of battles. Saul has since been killed. He helps bury Saul. David takes over. The people of Israel come. They surround him. They say, be our king. He says yes. He sets up shop at Jerusalem. He also seeks to build a temple there to God. God says no. God says we'll do it a different way at some future point in time. Just be faithful. David wins some battles, consolidates some real estate, but then when everybody else is out fighting, he has an affair completely by his own initiative with Bathsheba. He tries to get Uriah to impregnate her, or at least sleep with her, to wipe him free from the crime he has committed. Doesn't work. Uriah is killed, and the sin falls upon David. Nathan, his prophet at the time, his priest, comes and tells this story to David about a guy with one sheep and a guy with a bunch of sheep, and the guy with the bunches of the sheep takes the one sheep to sacrifice. And David's like, that isn't fair. Go after that man. And Nathan says, that is you. And it is. But here's the great thing. David says, I'm sorry. Forgive me. And that is the right thing to do. And God forgives him, but consequences don't go away. And the sins of the father go down into the sins of his son Amnon and his raping of Tamar, and Absalom killing Amnon, and spinning out from David, and how that polluted Absalom and David's relationship. But David still loves Absalom. Absalom rebels. A lot of people follow Absalom. David runs away from Jerusalem, comes back and fights Absalom's people and wins. And Absalom gets his hair caught in a tree as he's running away. And Joab, the general for David, kills him. And he comes back and he tells David, and David's all sad because his son Absalom had killed him. And Joab says, buck up, listen. We've been fighting for you against that rebel, and we won for you. You got to come out and say thank you to your troops. And David does. Again, David listens. David changes his mind. But his heart's broken. And as we come to the end of 2 Samuel, we see David sort of broken, right? We see him living with his mighty men and encamping himself at Jerusalem. But life's not that great for him. And that's where we end the book of 2 Samuel. Thank you for being a part of this study with me. I'm glad to see you. I hope to see you next week.